What hurts me the most about what Stanford University did to me is that they got away with it to this point. They'll do it to other people. And the reason I stood up in the first place was that these things wouldn't happen. And the fact that they've gotten it this far, hiding behind a facade, a general public perception with their branding, something they've hid behind all this time. And they're scumbags. They're scumbags for doing what they did to me, and they're scumbags for doing what they did to other people. Stanford University hurt my wife and myself in despicable ways. My wife is an innocent person. She's a great person who's done so much. If you look up model citizen in the phone book, it's my wife, and I can say that confidently. For them to have done this to her is a crime in itself. They should be held accountable for what they did. They should be, all these people who did this should be put on a post office wall as far as I'm concerned. What will make this right in my case is the people that did this be held accountable in the court of public opinion, where they should be held accountable. They've been able to hide, using the legal process, they've been able to hide from their evil deeds.
In recent years, whistleblowers have received greater attention. Time magazine made 3 whistleblowers its Persons of the Year in 2002 in honor of their exposing scandals at Enron, the FBI, and WorldCom. But for many whistleblowers, a recent New England Journal of Medicine study showed whistleblowers pay a tremendous personal cost for their disclosures, and almost 82% of them experience retaliation from employers, including being harassed, blackballed, and fired. In addition, whistleblowers face social ostracism from coworkers and undergo stressful psychological strain. As Mark Twain once wrote, "Character is doing the right thing when nobody's looking." There are too many people who think that the only thing that's right is to get by, and the only thing that's wrong is to get caught.
In this new insider-exclusive Investigative Network TV special, A Whistleblower's Challenge, Dan Gazzano's Story, our news team goes behind the headlines with George Duesdieker at the law firm of George Duesdieker as he represents Dan Gazzano in a classic David versus Goliath whistleblower retaliation wrongful termination case against Stanford University. Whistleblowers serve an important role to both their employers and to the general public by bringing to light an employer's ethical or even legal violations. Because of this, federal and state laws exist to protect certain whistleblowers from retaliation by an outed employer. The whole point of a whistleblower claim is to correct the actions engaged in by the institution that damage public safety, waste tax dollars, or violate the public trust in government. George Duesdieker is a dedicated attorney who advocates on behalf of his clients in cases involving employment disputes such as unpaid wages and overtime, wrongful termination, workplace discrimination, and sexual harassment. George has earned the highest respect from citizens and lawyers alike as one of the best trial lawyers in the San Francisco, San Jose area and across the nation. His goals not only to get justice for his clients, but to make sure that everyone is treated with equal respect and dignity as guaranteed under the Constitution of the United States. He has built a substantial reputation by consistently winning cases other law firms have turned down. His amazing courtroom skills and headline-grabbing success rate continue to provide his clients with the results they need and the results they deserve. This is the Insider Exclusive, live from San Jose, California. It is my great pleasure to introduce George Duesdieker to the show. Welcome to the show, George.
Good to be here.
Tell our audience a little bit about your law practice. What type of law do you practice?
I practice lots of employment law, plaintiff's employment law, wage discrimination, sex discrimination, whistleblower, retaliation, handicap discrimination.
Right, all for the little guy, right?
Yes.
Not representing companies.
Exclusively the little guy.
Okay, what made you decide to become a lawyer for the little guy?
To help people, and also sort of a family background. My father, my grandfather were both union representatives helping little people.
Okay. Today we are here talking about a case where you're helping the little guy. Tell us about your client, Dan Gazzano, please.
Dan is a gardener. He's a good person. Throughout his employment at Stanford, he wanted to assert his rights. He did that, but was retaliated against and fired.
Right. And tell us a little bit about the case in depth. In other words, he came to work for Stanford as a groundskeeper, I think in 2001, was it?
Yes, yes.
And he worked there, what, for about 10 years?
12 years.
12 years, okay. Run us through what happened when you say he stepped forward, he tried to represent some other people, you know, some of his other employees.
So in 2005, there was a one-day strike. He was active in leading that.
What was the strike about?
Better conditions, working conditions for the employees there at Stanford. Yes. And as a result of that, in 2006, he was fired, but then reinstated by an arbitrator. But after he was reinstated, they were out to get him the rest of the time.
Right.
It took them another 5 years to get him.
Yeah, and they found reasons which were kind of ridiculous.
Swearing on the job.
Swearing on the job. And that's illegal, I guess, when you work for Stanford?
That's what they would say.
Okay, so tell us about the case. What did you have to do?
Well, like any case, we got it on file. We took depositions. We were able to establish that all the things that Dan had been saying were correct. There was a corrupt union official. There were other things that were done wrong to Dan, and we have that all in the record.
Okay. Now, you went to an administrative hearing, or was this in court?
This was in court before a judge in San Jose.
And what happened at the trial?
Well, unfortunately, the case did not get to trial.
It was dismissed.
It was on summary judgment,
Yeah.
And so we see that as a difference of opinion that you can have about any case. We have an appeal that's been pending for a year and a half now.
At the Ninth Circuit?
Yes.
The appeals, do you generally take that long, or what?
Yes, and especially I think if we're going to do well on an appeal, the longer it goes, the more hopeful we are.
And what sort of, in your argument, you haven't had an oral argument, you just presented your motions to the appeal.
Yes.
Okay. What has been the rationale of why the decision should be overturned from the trial court?
Dan wasn't treated fairly by Stanford. He was retaliated after he made a whistleblowing complaint.
Yeah.
He wasn't treated fairly by the union under their processes, and those are the main issues on appeal.
Yeah, and I understand the union didn't even step up to the plate to represent him, did they?
Well, correct, and that's because he blew the whistle on the union leader being corrupt.
Right. And I remember one of the officials had a criminal background, correct?
That's the corruption, yes.
Yeah. Now, I wanted to ask a question. Is it illegal for him to have that job, having that background?
He had a job that federal law, long-standing federal law, says that convicted embezzler cannot be a union official, and this fellow had this job regardless.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about retaliation, because there's a lot of employees out there that they see something wrong on the job. Somebody does something wrong, they hear about something, and it bothers them. And they want to stand up and do the right thing, right?
That's a good thing.
What kind of position are they putting themselves in when they do that?
Well, employers should do the right thing, and if an employee comes forward and says that a law is being broken or an important regulation is being violated, I think most employers will do the right thing and correct it. But if the employer is not going to do the right thing, they put themselves at risk of being fired.
Right. So the employers that don't do the right thing, what kind of protection do the employees have against retaliation, getting fired?
They don't have any protection in advance. Once they are fired, then the option is having a whistleblower lawsuit, one of the things that I do. Mm-hmm. And so if you've been fired in retaliation for calling something out, then a lawsuit is your remedy.
It's my great pleasure to introduce Dan Gazzano and his wife, Brenda Carlson. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys have gone through a lot, haven't you?
Yes.
Tell our audience how this has affected you personally, both of you, and how it's affected your career, because you are a groundskeeper, aren't you?
Yes, I'm a gardener.
Yeah.
And
And you're a first grade teacher,
Yes.
correct? Yeah. I mean, you at the time that you finally got fired from Stanford, you were both trying to conceive, correct?
yes.
Medical benefits went away. How did that affect you guys?
Well, I think my wife could take that one.
Well, we didn't know at the time, but the first time that happened to him, his firing, we lost our benefits. That's when we were trying to conceive.
Yes.
And we went ahead and we tried some fertility treatments
They're
prior.
expensive.
Well, we were trying to do it with our benefits.
Yeah.
But even with the benefits, they were expensive.
Right.
So when we lost our benefits, it was devastating because we just couldn't afford it. It was like $10,000
Yeah.
for IVF. And
You know, I've done other whistleblower shows, and sometimes what happens is one, the husband, the wife, tries to do the right thing. They stand up, they make a public announcement or go through the proper channels, et cetera, and it jeopardizes their job, and they end up, you know, getting fired like you did. Not once, twice, right? For ridiculous reasons. How did that affect your relationship when you learned that he had been fired, wrongfully terminated, for reasons that most normal people would want to stand up, you know, and say, this is wrong and I'm standing up to represent it? How did that set with you?
it was just devastating to lose the benefits because
Yeah.
then we didn't want to, keep on going with the fertility treatments.
Yes.
But then even just going to our normal doctor visits was hard because
Right.
we didn't have our Kaiser anymore, so we couldn't even go to our regular doctors.
Yeah. When all this was happening, you obviously were talking, and you might come home as you probably did and say, I'm gonna pursue this because I think it's wrong. What were your thoughts, and what did you say to Dan?
I was totally with him.
Even though you knew all of this collateral damage might happen,
Right. Standing up against such a large organization. Yes.
nobody's going to push you guys around, right?
But I was going to stand up with him completely.
So Dan, if you had to do it all over again, what would you do?
I've given this a lot of thought, and I've had a lot of time to think about it.
Yeah.
You come into this kind of a situation with, a bit naive, and
Thinking
the
that
total-
somebody up there is
think-
going to help you.
Exactly. I mean, I'm a big belief in truth, justice, and the American way kind of
Right.
thing, and was always taught to stand up for what was right, and observed a lot of wrongdoing, which is probably why I got involved in the first place. I had seen Stanford do wrong to other people,
Yes.
and I was in a position to help those people. And I got caught in a buzzsaw, so to speak, for doing it. Was fired for union activity. One time, got my job back, and Stanford never got over it. They continued retaliation. They continued to block my career pursuits,
Yeah.
my ability
Promotions.
promotions, smear my name,
Yeah.
try to tarnish my reputation. The second time they fired me, they actually called the cops on me.
To what? Escort you off the property?
No, to try to paint me as some kind of nut job.
Yeah, but you got fired for some ridiculous thing, using profanity on the job, right?
Correct. It
So
was-
in the employee handbook, is there a rule that says you can't swear on the job?
I'm not altogether sure on that, but I
Yeah.
do know that I was represented by a union, and there is a thing called due process.
Yes.
Which means you have to be written up, suspended, reprimanded in some way. They basically went, like I like to tell people, from 0 to 200 immediately, and bypassed the process.
Yeah, they threw you under the bus.
Not once, but twice.
Yeah.
And they got
why
away.
why do you think they did that?
I think they did that because that's what they do.
Yeah.
And people, a lot of times, I think it's a general perception that a big organization like a Stanford University, they're like some squeaky clean
Yeah.
entity, and it's the farthest thing from the truth. And I have told people this many times, and I can say this with complete conviction. I believe they're evil. I believe what they do is evil. I believe I knew what they would potentially do to me, and I was prepared to stand up and take that hit. The thing that troubles me most is what they did to my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife is innocent. She's a first grade teacher. She actually does good in this world, and real good, and helping educate kids. And to do that to someone like that, who else could do that but an evil person, an evil entity? And I also like to point out, I went to their ombudsman. I realized what was happening early on in this process, and went to their internal ombudsman, who was the person who is supposed to handle these kind of internal inequities. And in the end, that was the person who sat on a threat assessment team and had the cops called on me. So if that's not a stacked deck or a rigged deal, I don't know what is. It was, like I said, it was an educational, it's been quite an educational experience. But I would do it again. I would do it again. And when we knew this thing had to go to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, one of the things that George and I talked about, and Brenda and I talked about, was I just got to know. It's not what I believe. It was a fact. The union and the university colluded to do what happened to my wife and I. And I sat and watched a process take place where, at a certain point in it, I knew I was going to get screwed. I was going to get screwed by a political force, a political influence. And I was okay with being David. I just never knew Goliath was
so big
and so corrupt. So corrupt.
Yeah. So Brenda, last question. Pretend Stanford University's over here right now, okay? What would you say to them about how they treated you and your husband?
I have so many things to say.
Shoot, you're on national TV.
The thing I would say, I would ask them first, why did they do it? Because it just, caused us a lot of pain and loss, We lost the chance, obviously, to have children with the loss of benefits. And I would just, try to keep it simple, but I would basically ask them those few things. I'm not a person of a lot of words, but...
Okay, well, I want to thank both of you for spending time with us today. We're going to get the message out. Hopefully the appeal will be successful, and thank you for coming here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Like in this case, how do you prove retaliation?
That an employee has made a complaint and shortly thereafter was fired for no good reason. In this case, swearing on the job, but it could be any made-up reason.
Is it illegal to swear on the job when you work for Stanford University?
Well, they would have you think that.
I mean, is there some rule in your code of conduct that says you can't do this?
I think Stanford's no different than any other workplace. Dan's a gardener, and Dan doesn't talk any worse than any other gardener, and I think his language is entirely appropriate for his workplace.
Okay. Now, being an employment lawyer and representing the little guys, you probably have a lot of people come to you with all kinds of cases. How do you select the cases that you want to spend time and your money? Because as a plaintiff lawyer, you're the one that's investing your own time and money, correct?
I look for people that have truly been wronged, who know that having a lawsuit isn't going to solve every problem in life, but want some measure of justice, and somebody who's comfortable with me and I'm comfortable with them.
Right.
I don't take clients on a snap judgment. We talk quite a bit.
Right. Whistleblowing cases are tough to win, though, aren't they?
In the end, if you have a good case, you'll win. It's just going to take a while, but the toughness is only the time, not the amount of work.
Yeah, and usually in cases like this, what is the end result for someone that's been retaliated against? They get their job back? They get compensated? What?
Getting a job back is very rare. For somebody that wins a retaliation whistleblowing case,
Yeah.
the award is usually money.
Okay, very good. Well, we've enjoyed having you on the show today, and thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.